Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
This is Phil Ferris, and welcome to Business Innovators Radio. If you are a business owner who often feels overwhelmed and stressed because everybody wants a piece of you, this episode is for you. If your partners and family are complaining that you're spending too much time working and you find it hard to create boundaries, this episode is for you. My guest today helps busy business owners become more productive and find work-life balance. Gina Gardiner is a #1 international best-selling author, motivational speaker, empowerment and relationship coach, and transformation leadership trainer with well over 30 years of experience helping people experience happiness, success, and fulfillment. She is the founder of the Thrive Together Tribe membership and personal and spiritual development program and the Enlightened Leadership Program. Gina is passionate about supporting people to live a truly happy, successful, and fulfilling life, and supporting leaders to become the spiritual matriarchs and patriarchs who lead with integrity, compassion, and the courage to do what is right rather than what is expedient. Well, Gina, thank you so much for being on the show today.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
I'd like to begin by having you describe the leadership programs and services you provide and the people that you serve.
The big program is the Enlightened Leadership Program, and it's based on the principle that in order to lead others well, you have to lead yourself first. So there are two very distinct strands, one which is around personal and spiritual development, and actually creating a great relationship with yourself and working on your beliefs about yourself and your business and life in general. And then the other side is more of the conventional leadership, but also taking that a step further. Because you're the common denominator that you take into your life every moment of every day. So this is about leadership for life. It's a 10-month program, and the reason for that is because I've noticed with all of the businesses that I've worked with that the tipping point is between 8 and 10 months. And that tipping point is where people have made the changes and they've become consistent. So when there's a stressful, challenging moment, they don't revert to old patterns. But the research, most leadership programs, 6 months later, they're only using between 7 and 10% of what they've learned. And the reason for that is it's not changed them. So this program is fully supported with leadership facilitators on a one-on-one basis. There's group coaching calls with me. There's videos, PowerPoint presentations, core reading, something to suit every learning style. But it's actually about doing the deep inner work on yourself. Because ultimately, enlightened leaders take radical responsibility for themselves and everything they do or not, everything they say or not, and when and how they do them. And I know it works because I've been doing this for over 30 years. And so I work with, this works really for business owners who are so busy working in their business that they haven't got time to work on their business.
Okay.
But they're often in overwhelm. They're trying to do it all themselves. Often their style of leadership is, well, it's better to do it myself because at least I then know it's done properly. They often are very stressed. They work long hours. And that there are businesses that are doing well, but they want to take them to the next level, and yet they don't have the capacity because they're not working in an enlightened way. They're not engaging with their staff in a way that helps them become more profitable because they become more productive. So with every organization I've worked with, if I've worked with them for 10 months or more, they have become more productive, more profitable, but much better working relationships, a happier, more satisfied work staff, better work-life balance for everyone, and therefore better well-being for everyone. So I know this stuff works. It is for people who want to take action. It also works in the bigger organizations for middle and senior managers. So the principles and the strategies work very well in both contexts.
Now, let me just back up just a little bit. People probably don't, I'm assuming they don't just call you up and say, I want to be an enlightened leader. They usually have some other issues that they're trying to solve. What is it that they come to you asking for? And then we'll talk a little bit how you work with them.
Can I give you 4 very quick examples?
Sure.
So, because it's interesting that people come for different reasons, but when you scratch the surface, there's very often real similarities around what's going on. So in the first example, one of my clients, they're a dental laboratory, 11 people on the staff. And when I started working with them, their turnover in the year before I started working with them was just over £500,000. So it was £530,000 turnover. Okay. Everybody worked on a piece rate. And the owner, who was also a senior technician within the company, and his wife did all of the admin, he and his staff were regularly into work for 6 a.m. and rarely left before 7:30 or 8. They were run ragged. He would want to be one of the gang, and he would not, something would go wrong and he wouldn't deal with it, and then he would blow up and everybody would be wary, and then he was surprised because they didn't want to be matey. Also, it was always their fault, and one of his constant complaints was that he's not got any time, because they kept coming to say, is this good enough? Now, they don't work on piece rate, they're salaried. They start work at 8 a.m. They're rarely later than 5:30, and on a Friday afternoon, they generally go to the pub at 3. Their turnover in the last year was £876,000.
Okay.
And the reason that they're doing so well is he has taken charge of creating a learning environment where he takes radical responsibility for his own performance, and everyone takes radical responsibility for their own performance. He's taught them what excellent looks like. They have a development day on Thursday. They're doing all of their normal work, but it's a teaching day on Thursday and everybody's involved. And so they work as a team, and the work is divvied out in the morning. People are much more upskilled. They are much more involved and interested in what they're doing. There's a great atmosphere there, and he is able to work strategically on his business. It's more profitable, better working relationships, and actually a much better work-life balance. So, example 1. Example 2, a hotel. When I started working with them, they were £8 million in debt. They'd inherited the hotel. We had 3 directors, 1 director doing all the work, the other 2 just sitting there waiting for the handout at the end of the month. And they had a dysfunctional staff. In fact, when I started working with them, the hotel was empty most of the day. They had a few weddings during the year, and the money they did make was made on reps staying in midweek in the night, Monday to Thursday. The first thing we had to do was to sort out the directors. They were brothers and sisters, and it was much easier for me to have the conversation about, right, now let's look at your strengths, let's look at what's fair, and let's define the responsibilities you're each going to take individually and the responsibilities you're going to take collectively. Reorganize the staffing structure, train the staff in what did good customer service look like. Now, one of the things that they did is their income was poor because there's nobody coming to the hotel. And part of the problem was there was no strategic planning. So they'd start to advertise Christmas in October. Now they advertise Christmas at their Christmas functions. And if I tell you that they have reduced their debt in 5 years to £1 million, but they've also refurbished the hotel from top to bottom. When you go into the hotel at any time of day, there are people in there for morning coffee, for lunch, afternoon tea. There are conferences going on. They've got a huge waiting list for weddings. the hotel is buzzing and they're running at 79% occupancy for their bedrooms, which is a pretty good turn. Why? So now Christmas is planned not in the year of Christmas, but it's planned in the October the year before. All of the stuff is ready on the table at their Christmas functions. And this year they started their Christmas functions on the last week of November. They were fully booked, all right, on some nights by the end of January, because they offered people for next year, this year's prices if you booked before January. What they became is much more successful. They had very defined roles. Everybody knows in the hotel whose job's what, and it's a much better place to work. It's buzzing and it's becoming, it's made profit in order to pay back the money and also to refurbish the hotel.
Those are pretty impressive testimonies. The question is, where did you start? Because a transformation like that is not something that just you wave your wand and tomorrow they're strategic and they're operating differently. So tell us a little bit about what you did that caused them to get to that point where they were now in a organization that was, fun to work for and it was profitable.
I think the first thing is that you have to create a relationship that's based on trust and respect. So then when you are being open and honest with them, they can take some of the challenging messages. And that's done by open questions. So if I may use another example, this is for a manufacturing company, and they manufacture the wood for wood floors, and they have a sister company that fits them.
Okay.
So I'm working with the always work with the senior decision makers. Why? Because they're the ones that can affect change quickly, and it all starts with them. They have to model the behaviors they want from them. For me, it's all about integrity, compassion, and the courage to do what's right. So this is a very early meeting. I'd met with the senior director, and it's the first time I had met all of the directors. And I start off by some simple questions. So tell me what you do. Why do you do it that way? So one of the things that came up in that meeting is that they would do a lot of repair in domestic situations. Remember, they're a company that were going to fit their new wood flooring that they were manufacturing, although they sold that to other fitters and building merchants and so on. And it turns out that a lot of the time that was taken up by their teams was taken up with very, very small jobs, often across London, which may not be far in miles. They had a minimum of 25-mile radius, but of course that took in most of Greater London. I don't know about your main cities, but getting across Greater London can take you 3 hours.
Right.
And they could go and do a job that was actually going to earn them £400. Cost them, the team, a whole day there and back on the petrol and the materials. So I asked them, just the open question, do you think that that's serving you as a company? And they said, well, we've got to take those, otherwise we wouldn't have any customers. And I said, just look at what it's actually costing you. And then think about how it would be if you spent the energy that you spend on finding and servicing those people, if you spent that energy on finding new customers. And if you put a limit on your smallest job is £1,000, because then those very tiny jobs, they're not cost effective to you. The other thing is that they did a lot of repairing of other people's work, so they didn't know what was going on underneath, and they would quote based on what they could see, but actually it would then turn out to be a much bigger job. So one simple thing we did is they decided in that meeting not to repair anybody else's floors but their own. They decided that if they were going to do a repair, then there was a minimum fee. If people wanted to pay that, that was absolutely fine. And we talked about the 80-20 rule. You get 80% of your profit from 20% of your clients. You also get 80% of your aggravation from 20% of your clients, but not necessarily the same 20 and 80.
Right.
we also then started talking about, well, how did people know about them? Where were they featuring? And why were they focusing on these tiny jobs when they had a highly skilled workforce? They had a great product. And so they started to look for appearing in a very different arena. They became very successful. They did some prestigious work. For example, they did the flooring in the new Tate Gallery and several other big commercial buildings in London. And the whole tenor of their business over a few months changed. It wasn't instant, and there were some growing pains. But on the other side of the business, you had people, they would manufacture these floors, and they went, and one of their selling points is that was not open to the public, that they only sold to trade. Okay. But one of the things in talking, and the idea wasn't mine, but it came out of my questioning, was that they started to bespoke sets of finishes that the tradesmen could then actually trademark as their own. Okay. That they would buy their particular set. It made no odds to the people who were manufacturing. It was just a question of matching the number and on putting the label on. It was John Blogg's incorporated label on it. But actually that meant that the people they were serving became much more loyal to them because they had a product which was giving them the opportunity to look bigger and better than perhaps they were. Now, all of that came, and all of that work came from the people who were involved starting to think outside the box, starting to be strategic in their thinking, because 95% of what we do is habitual. We do it because we've always done it. And it's not till somebody says, but why, that you start to question. We started to look at people, and then a big part of enlightened leadership is if you're stepping into your power, it's not about you having dominion over somebody else. It's about you nurturing the potential of other people so they have the expertise and the confidence to give a really great contribution. And so, again, instead of the directors, if they said something, the staff said, well, how high would you like me to jump? The approach became very different. So they had teams of highly effective, enthusiastic people who felt that they had a part to play. And certainly in the wood company and in the dental company, one of the things that they decided to do, and something that I had encouraged them to do, was that a percentage of the profits was shared amongst the staff. So there was a vested interest in the company doing well. But in all of those cases, and the whole point of enlightened leadership is, if you're the only person who can make the decisions, if you don't use the combined skills, experience, enthusiasms of your people, if you don't get ownership of your vision and why your vision is important, then you are missing such a rich resource in terms of the people who are available to you. And in doing that, your competition have the edge. So it's talking to people about resilience and anticipating what next and being strategic and recognizing the value of what you have and then looking for the gaps. And many people that I've worked with initially, they're worried about appointing somebody who's better than them at whatever. How will I manage them if they know more than me? But enlightened leaders want the best of everybody. And their job is to actually bring that out and to coordinate them and to create the team and the culture and the vision and so on, rather than being the best boy or girl in the class. And one of the things that's very clear in all of the work I do, leave your ego at home. Put it under the pillow with your pajamas. Because if you want to be successful in business, and to do that and do it with, as I say, with integrity, compassion and courage, there is no place for the big I am. This is about we're in it together, and out of it we can be stronger.
Now, let me ask, Gina, we talked about everything we do is habitual and people get used to doing things a certain way. And you're talking about a pretty big mind shift of, I have to be the best. Now I can have a team of the best. And that's a big shift. What's the biggest challenge you have in getting people to make that transition mentally before they can do it as a leader?
I think it's, for me, it's the shift between blaming everybody else. You know, my workforce are useless, or my workforce, they never listen to me, or they don't do what I want. And I think once the leaders actually recognize, okay, so how have you contributed to that? I'll give you another example. I was working with the general manager of the hotel. This is just before the lockdown. He's had 3 F&B managers. Now, bearing in mind, a lot of my work was with the directors. They, 18 months ago, brought in a general manager, and they've taken a step back from the day-to-day working in the hotel. And he's a great young guy, but quite inexperienced. And I've been working with him. And he'd got a food and beverage manager. It's the second one that he's had. And he was saying it's not working out. And, you know, he interviewed really well, and I'm really disappointed in him. And I just stopped him and said, so how have you contributed to the fact that not 1 but 2 F&B managers haven't been what we want?
What do you say?
Silence. He thought for a while, and so I then posed some other questions. So I said, okay, I know at the interview that you were very clear about your expectations, because we'd talked about it before and we'd set the questions. But in your induction, did you carry on in terms of that expectation and what that looked like in real terms? Because we use these words, don't we? Excellence. I want excellence. But your view of excellence in the context of whatever and my view of excellence are likely to be different. You talk your language, that could be apples, and I'm talking my language. We're both talking fruit, but I'm talking bananas. And so I have a different meaning in terms of what it looks like and what it feels like to you for these words. Now, in your induction, if you're really clear and you have a shared understanding of, in this specific context, good looks like this, but if you want it to be excellent, what do you do to shift good to excellent? And you're really clear about that, then there is a real communication going on. So my next question is, when did things start to go wrong? And he said, well, probably within the first couple of weeks. So what did you do? The responsibility you're putting all on that other person for not doing what you want, but you've not held them to account. You've not given them developmental feedback. You've not then set the agenda. So ultimately, of course, they have some responsibility. I'm not saying that they don't, but as the leader and the manager, if you're an enlightened leader, you recognize that it is your role to set the scene, to create the culture of development, not blame, high explicit shared expectations, and then hold people to account, but do it in a developmental way. If they continue not to live up to your expectations, then perhaps it's not the right place. However, most times in my experience, if you are very, very clear, then people will rise to that because they know what you want and why it's important. Now, back in my history, I was the principal of a school for 20 years, okay? And I ran my school mostly from a wheelchair. And one of the things about what I've learned is I've had to learn a different way of developing leaders because I couldn't physically get into the classrooms. I'd like to think I'd have done it anyway, but I'm honest enough to think I'd probably wouldn't have done. And one of the things I would do when I interviewed people, right from the start, I would say, before we start the interview, I just want to be really clear. If you come in here, you're going to be expected to work really hard. You're going to be expected to be a great team member. We don't do moody and we don't do ego. But what we do is give you a great opportunity to develop and grow. But if you're somebody who is moody, if you're somebody who doesn't like being a good team player and doesn't want to help other teachers and the children to learn. If that's not you, now's the time to say it, and we'll part company very happily. So when they were appointed, the first time that they weren't a good team player, or very often with young staff, they'd come in on a Monday having had a heavy weekend and they were a bit grumpy, I could go and say very quietly to them, do you remember that conversation we had before your interview? And they would say yes or no. No, I'd remind them, and I'd say, that's moody. We don't do that. So leave your moody at home, because here you're modelling being a professional to your children and to your colleagues. And I'd use a very neutral voice, and it's really important. Part of what I teach people is how to have those conversations in a way which allows people to hear what's being said, rather than being governed by the tone of voice, which trips them into their habitual triggers of their nagging or they don't like me. And I have to say, one of the things that I found really heartwarming is when young staff particularly would say, you can tell us things that that effectively are telling us that what we're doing isn't good enough, but it feels good because we feel we want to do better. Because it was never about criticizing the person. It was about saying that behavior is not what's wanted. And teaching people these techniques and the understanding that if you are a leader, whether you're a leader of your family, this leadership for life, because this stuff works in a family with your children, it works in a community, it works in a business setting, a corporate setting, it works anywhere. It's leadership for life. And if you take radical responsibility for your own emotional well-being and for what you do, then it means that you are not in victim mode. While you are letting other people decide how you feel, you have to put up with what they give you. And so it is about, that's one of the reasons why the program is so long, and why half the program is about developing yourself as a person, so that you have the confidence, the resilience, the expertise to actually manage any situation.
Now, almost any manager or leader would want to have the kind of results that your hotel and the wood company got. But it's kind of tough to reach out and ask someone from the outside to help you change. I'm sure there's people out there that want to do it, but just can't quite get over the hump of reaching out and doing it. So what is it that holds people back from reaching out to someone like you? And what do you do to help them make it easy to do so?
It's a really good question, because I don't think there's a single answer. I think for some people, they're frightened of failure. There are three mindsets around success. I will fail. And people who think they will fail, it's a done deal, they will fail. And there are people who say they want to change, but actually they're so fearful that they can't, that they won't start. The next group are those, I fear I will fail. And I think they're probably the group that we're talking about. And the third group would be, I will succeed. Don't know how, but I will succeed. And they're the people who are easy to help, because they know they're going to succeed, and they recognize that having somebody like me or coming on my program will give them the tools which will help them to succeed more easily. But it's the people who I fear I might fail. And one of the things, it's an interesting one, because I'm not into the hard sell, because people, I can't make you change, and it would be against the principles of everything that I'm teaching and working with people to do, is if I came to people and said, you've got to change because what you're doing is rubbish, or what you're doing isn't working for you. And so I present people with, this is what it can do for you. However, it's not for the faint-hearted. This is not one of those programs where you buy the program and it goes on a shelf and then you moan that it hasn't worked. It's just as important for us that the people coming on the program, and this is the program in its current form is just newly launched, although it's 30 years worth of experience. But the people coming on the program, it's just as important that they are right for us as we are right for them. And it's for people who actively want things to be better, but don't know how. And it doesn't matter if you don't know how. That's our job. It's our job to support and help you. Your job is to know that you want to do things and do things well, and you care about your staff, and you want good things for your staff, and you want your business to be successful. This is not about, this is not shying away from being profitable, but it is about doing it in an enlightened way. And so I'd say to you that, the people who say, I haven't got the time or I haven't got the money, investing in yourself, investing in a program like this, if I look at the profit levels, just look at the pure money, it's paid for itself. Well, look at the dental lab. It's gone up from 530,000 to 860 something or whatever it is, £1,000. That's a huge increase. So if you set that against the cost of the program, it's very small beer, isn't it? If you put this against, instead of working long hours being frazzled, that you have a better quality of life, that your relationships are better, what price do you put on that? But in many ways, and maybe I'm wrong, I present it, and then it's for people to decide whether it's for them. But if they're saying I haven't got the time and I haven't got the money, which are the usual two excuses, I would say to them, what cost are you putting on the quality of your life and the quality of the lives of your workers? What will you invest your money and your time in? And what's more important to you, that you have perhaps a new model car, or you've got a bit more money in the bank, or that you are running a business and running your life in a way that has purpose and happiness and fulfillment, much more feasible, and a great sense of well-being. I mean, one of the reasons I started this is the statistics are scary. In the UK, over half the prescriptions that are written are for antidepressants. When you talk to people and you look at the research, most people who are on antidepressants say that work is a major contributor. It's not the only one, but it's a major contributor. And if you look at the quality of leadership, and one of the reasons that I've not only do I have one-on-one clients coming and they're stressed because they're stressed because they've got a boss who they consider awful, or they're the boss and they've got a team that they're struggling. And they say it's like trying to herd cats, and it can all be avoided. And I look at the quality of leadership, and as the economy has become, gets more difficult, many leaders go into bullying mode because they're so desperate to achieve their targets and their profit margins and so on. And it's completely counterproductive because they forget to use their own talents. They don't see the talents of their workforce because they're so blinded by working through fear. And yet when you can engage people and say, look, this is the problem, can we together find a solution? I'm not saying it's a done deal, but you're much more likely to find the solution in that situation. So I say to anyone who's listening, and this program is delivered all through the internet. There's no physical presence, although ultimately I'd like to arrange meetings, physical meetings for those who've been through the program. But it's been designed, anyone who has got access to a computer. The one-on-one sessions are done through Zoom or Skype, as are the group coaching. Everything else is online on a membership site. It can be done in your own time. The whole purpose of this is to make it as easy as possible. And ultimately, I'd say to you, what sort of leader do you want to be? What do you want your legacy to be? And lots of people talk about their legacy when they die. But we each leave a living legacy every time we open our mouths and speak, or not, and every time we act, or not. So why not ensure that you make yours as positive as possible, that you do the best you truly do the best that you can and you step into your genuine power, that you actually recognize that you have the capacity to lead in a very embracing way, one that enables people rather than keeps people squished and squashed.
Very powerful message. Leadership is a choice, how you run your business. It's not because of the normal velocity of the business as you've been doing it. It's about what do you want it to be. What you're talking about is you can direct the change going forward, but it starts with you internally.
I think Gandhi said, be the change you want in others.
Okay.
The starting point has to be you. You can't change other people, but you do have absolute power to change you if you choose. And it can be a bit tricky. And that's why having someone, the program, it creates a structure, but also the support to help you through the sticky points. I think the landscape when we come out of the pandemic situation, it's not going to be the same. We're going to have to adapt to a very different way of working, particularly in industries like the restaurant, like the hospitality and so on. There are many industries that are going to have to really be creative in the way in which they move forward. And I think a lot of organizations, if they try and continue in the old paradigm, are going to struggle.
Going forward, there are new rules, and we don't know what they are. They will be written and rewritten as we go forward because it's volatility and uncertainty and doubt. It's out there, and it's not going to go away. No. And so you have to be able to learn to manage and adapt, very, very agile in doing that. And so it's not just, I made one change, that's done. It's learned how to make the changes when I have to change, which is different than I made the one change and it's all done for you.
Don't you think it's interesting? As I see it, there are three constants in life. Death, because as soon as we're born, we know we're going to die. Taxes, because we know we're going to get taxed. And the third is change. And we're changing from the moment we're conceived until we die. And yet it's something that people find incredibly challenging. Now, I know that's hot-wired into us because as cavemen and women, change meant threat. But those people who are able to embrace change, not do change for change's sake and not throw the baby out with the bathwater, but people who are able to anticipate and to look to the future, but at the same time, taking their staff with them, helping their staff. A big part of a leader's job is to demonstrate hope, is to be the person that says, we may not look the same as a business by the time this finishes, but we will find a way through together. And, I've got confidence, not blind optimism. I'm not burying my head in the sand. And if I need to make difficult decisions, I will, but I'll make them for the right reason. And I will engage you in the process so that you can be sure that you're not trying to second guess what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, that there will be a sense of honesty and openness and communication, which means you can have the confidence that we will find the best route forward together.
Now, Gina, if people want to learn more about your program and more about you, where should they go?
If they're interested in the Enlightened Leadership Program, go to enlightenedleadership.co.co. That website is all about the leadership program. Incidentally, if they're interested in being an affiliate, I'm also very interested in people who would like to become an affiliate to the Genuinely You programs. If you're interested in the range of programs, because there are other programs, a personal and spiritual development program, there's also a membership group for people who want to spend time with like-minded people. Go to genuinely, and then a hyphen, and then the word you.com. So genuinely-you.com, enlightenedleadership.co. You can email me at Gina, Gina, at genuinely-you.com, and I'll get that. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook, so I'm quite easy to find. There's loads of free resources on the website. I'm on YouTube. People can find lots of the stuff that I've done. But if you are a leader of a business out there, I would urge you, don't sit and wait for the pandemic to finish. Get yourself on the road to some of this technology, if you like, so that you're well placed. And, if we can help you, we'll be only too happy to.
Thank you for sharing your insights and your passion. Please, for people that want to improve their leadership moving forward, please reach out to Gina. And Gina, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.